It started like any other neighborhood gathering. A warm evening. People milling around in someone's backyard, holding plastic cups filled with cheap wine, pretending to be closer than they truly were. The usual social routine played out. A silent competition to prove whose life was more fulfilling. At first, I didn't think much of it when the conversation turned to my husband, Mark. I hadn't paid much attention when people began joking about him. Mark had always been a bit awkward socially. He had a stutter when he spoke and a habit of telling jokes no one understood until it was far too late. I'll admit, I probably rolled my eyes at him more times than I should have, but that night, it didn't seem to matter. After a few glasses of Chardonnay and the group's relaxed encouragement, I started noticing something shift within me. I found myself laughing along with the other women, making light-hearted comments about Mark. "We love him, but he's a bit different," I said. At first, it felt harmless, but then the words slipped out before I could stop them. "You should see him try to fix things around the house. It's like watching a reverse tutorial on YouTube. He always makes things worse." The laughter wasn't just polite. It was real, genuine. It wasn't a shallow chuckle that tries to make you feel like the most interesting person in the room. It was real laughter, the kind that made you feel like the funniest person alive. I could see it now. I was hooked. I enjoyed the attention, the spotlight. I kept it going, even making fun of Mark's sense of direction. He could get lost in his own driveway, I teased. He argues with the GPS, like it's a personal affront. I know a better way, I added, only for the joke to land perfectly each time. The group erupted in laughter again. Even Karen, the woman who'd always looked down on me since we moved in, wiped away tears, actually laughing for the first time. For the first time, I felt like I had the upper hand, like I had won some unspoken social contest. And then, just as I thought the moment couldn't get any better, everything changed. I hadn't noticed Mark standing by the grill, quietly flipping burgers until he walked toward us. The change in his demeanor was unmistakable. His shoulders were tense, his jaw clenched. The laughter in the yard abruptly ceased, replaced by a heavy silence. He stopped in front of me, his gaze locking with mine, a look I had never seen before. His voice was calm, but with something sharper than I had ever heard. "Funny stuff, huh?" he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "You know what's really funny? Spending 15 years trying to make everyone else happy, only to end up the butt of the jokes at backyard barbecues." The silence was deafening. I tried to laugh it off, to brush it off as just another one of his awkward moments, but his eyes didn't soften. There was no smile, no hint that he was kidding. He wasn't playing along. "Okay, let me tell you a joke," he said, his tone now biting. "You can tell your audience how funny it is." And then he turned. I stood there, feeling the ground beneath me give way. The weight of his words hit me all at once, and I could hardly breathe. My face burned. I wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "Mark," I stammered, but he didn't wait. Without another glance, he grabbed his jacket and walked out the side door, leaving the party in stunned silence. The party ended abruptly. People murmured awkwardly, glancing away, searching for excuses, avoiding eye contact like cockroaches scurrying when the lights come on. I barely had time to collect myself before my phone buzzed with messages. Most were concerned, asking if I was okay or commenting on how intense everything had been, but there was nothing from Mark. That's when it hit me. He wasn't coming back. The next morning, I woke up on the couch, my neck stiff and my head throbbing. I hadn't drunk too much, but the hangover wasn't the real problem. The house was eerily quiet. The first thing I noticed was that Mark's keys weren't hanging on their usual hook by the door. It had always been his habit to hang them up, always accompanied by a casual "another day down," but not today. Then I saw the note neatly folded, tucked under the remote. My heart sank. I knew before even unfolding it that it was bad news. As I read the words, they stung more than I expected. "I'll go get the rest of my things when I've decided where I want to go. Please don't call me. I need space. You've made your feelings clear. Mark. The words felt like a slap twice over, once from the note itself, and once from the brutal realization that he was really gone. I wanted to call him, to apologize, but my pride wouldn't let me. I kept telling myself it was just a joke. People always joke about their spouses, don't they? I repeated this mantra as I brewed coffee and stared out the window, but the truth was impossible to ignore. It nagged at me, gnawing at my insides like a whisper that wouldn't stop. I had become the antagonist in this story. I had turned into the joke. His face, his voice quivering when he said, 15 years, still lingers in my mind. I can't decide what's more agonizing to bear, the fact that he left or that I didn't see it coming. The next morning, the texts began pouring in. Karen, the ever-curious neighbor, sent the first message. Hey, just checking in. Hope you're okay after what happened last night. Then Jennifer, another neighbor, followed up, Claire, I feel awful. Do you want to talk? Maybe grab lunch. Even Karen's husband weighed in. Mark's a good guy. I hope you two can work things out. If there's anything I can do, let me know. They all meant well. But each message felt like a spotlight casting on my face, illuminating my failure. Then came another text from Karen, this time with a photo. The image struck me harder than I expected. Not only did I miss his presence, but the weight of the unresolved issues between us suffocated me. The photo had been taken at a cafe where Karen had seen Mark. He sat alone, calm yet distant, resigned to something I couldn't comprehend. My first instinct was to scream, to cry, or throw my phone against the wall. But instead, I just stared at it. Mark looked like someone who had already made up his mind, someone who had already closed the door without giving me the chance to mend things. I paced back and forth, my mind racing, trying to piece together where it all went wrong. Our relationship had never been perfect, but we had loved each other, hadn't we? We weren't the type of couple who posted anniversary photos on social media or made grand public declarations of affection, but we shared something, at least, I thought we did. I tried to recall the last time we had an honest conversation. Something meaningful, not just the routine of groceries or bills, but I couldn't. It had been months, maybe longer. Somewhere along the way, between the monotony of life and Mark's habit of confiding in his friends, I had stopped seeing him as my partner. And now, it seemed I had finally pushed him to his breaking point. I called him, but there was no answer. I waited, then sent a text. Sorry, can we talk? Another hour passed, and I texted again, I'm not well. I need to hear from you by 4 p.m. I was on edge, the empty coffee pot mocking me. I found myself Googling desperate questions like, what do you do when your husband leaves? And how do you fix a broken marriage? One comment in a forum for women going through separation stood out. If they don't want to fix it, you can't fix it. But you can show them you're willing to try. So I tried. I drove to the cafe where Karen had seen Mark, not really knowing what I was hoping for. Maybe just to see him, perhaps talk face to face. But when I arrived, he was gone. The barista told me he'd left an hour earlier, without leaving any contact details. My next stop was Tom's house. Mark's brother had always been the family mediator. If anyone could get Mark to listen, it would be him. But when I arrived, Tom didn't know where Mark was either. What the hell happened, Claire? Tom asked, crossing his arms, concern evident in his voice. It was a stupid argument, I stammered, my voice shaky. It wasn't even an argument, just me teasing him like I always do. I didn't realize I could hurt him. Tom didn't laugh. Instead, his expression hardened. You're not just anyone, Claire. You're his wife. That night, I sat in the bedroom surrounded by Mark's memories. The pillow on his side of the bed, his clothes hanging in the closet, the half-empty bottle of cologne on the dresser. The house felt unbalanced, as though I were holding my breath, waiting for him to walk back in. His words from the note echoed in my mind like an awful song on repeat. You've made your feelings clear. I had no answers, only the gnawing realization that I had failed him in ways I had never understood before. The next morning, I knew I couldn't keep pretending things could go back to how they were. Mark wasn't coming back unless I gave him a reason to. I couldn't just sit and wait, hoping he'd change his mind. So, I drove to his office, rehearsing in my head what I was going to say. But when I arrived, his assistant told me he hadn't been in all week. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just taking time away from me. He was taking his entire life away. A few days later, I received a letter from Mark. It wasn't a text, it wasn't an email. It was a real handwritten letter. When I read it, it shattered me. He had been staying with friends, thinking things over. He said that after that night, he realized it wasn't just a joke. He had stopped seeing me as his partner long ago. "I can't be the object of your self-satisfied ridicule," he wrote. "You deserve better, and so do I. We've decided to apply for a divorce. It wasn't an easy decision, but I believe it's the right one. I hope we can handle this with respect and take care of each other." His final decision crushed me. My first instinct was to argue, to beg him to come back. But deep down, I knew he was right. I had spent so much time criticizing him, poking fun at his flaws, that I had forgotten what it meant to love him with my whole heart. That evening, I sat in the empty house, allowing myself to feel everything I had been avoiding: regret, shame, sorrow. I wanted to hate him for giving up on us, but I couldn't, because if I'm being honest with myself, I was the one who had given up first. The divorce was quick and amicable. We didn't have children, and our property was minimal, so there was nothing to fight over. Mark moved into a small apartment in a nearby town, and I stayed in the house. Eventually, the neighbors stopped talking about it, and life moved on. But sometimes, I'd see Mark at the grocery store or catch a glimpse of him driving by. He always seemed at peace. Not happy exactly, but content. And that made me sad. Sad because I knew he had found peace without me. A year has passed now, and I'm still trying to figure things out. I've been in therapy, trying to understand how I let myself take the person I loved most for granted. The truth is, Mark's departure woke me up from a dream I didn't even know I needed to wake from. It made me question everything: how I see myself, how I treat the people I care about, and what I really want in a relationship. Do I miss him every day? Yes, but I also know he did the right thing, because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away from the people who have stopped fighting for you.